tell me about. I know your new album's called Amos, but tell me about your grandfather.
Amos is my grandfather. He got out of the Army, met my grandmother. They were married for 53 years, and my grandfather had a passion for country music like nobody I've ever known. I was telling somebody the other day, I said, if you would have met him and let him talk about country music, you go, this man's made millions of country. But he never played a gig for $1. Never, but he played 4 nights a week, and he was a telephone man. But when him and my grandmother met, they had, my dad and my uncle, and he passed that passion down to that generation of our family. And they had a family band called the Country Cousins back in the 80s, and it was my dad, my grandpa, and my uncle, and my cousins. And then came my generation. And I was always just intrigued with it as a kid. And I don't really, I don't remember being on the stage, but the photos are there. When you're 1 or 2 years old and you're knee high to your dad and you're playing your fake little guitar. And but he passed it down, and it was like our bonding thing. And it was just I couldn't get enough of the history of country music. And so when I was about 9 years old, I really started wanting to learn how to actually play the guitar, and actually I wanted to learn how to sing. And so the first song I ever learned was Today I Started Loving You Again. And then it was Green Green Grass at Home, Porter Wagner's version. And, Lady Down on Love and all the old Earl Thomas Conley and Waylon and Ray Price and Heartaches by the Number and all these songs that when you're a kid, you don't know, I didn't know Green Green Grass at Home was about a guy on death row waking up, about to go get executed. I just loved the story, and I loved how Porter sang it. And I loved the fact that my grandfather was so passionate about all this stuff that he was telling me about it. And he was the one that taught me the importance of the Grand Ole Opry. We'd watch VHSs of Minnie Pearl and String Bean and Grandpa Jones and all, Marty Stewart and everybody on the Grand Ole Opry and talk and discuss how cool it would be. I don't know how you get there from Eustis, Florida, but if you find out, man, how badass is that going to be to get there, And so he was his passion is that's what drove me to want to know more. And I didn't realize how fortunate I was then to be introduced to that music until later on in life. And then when I started, things started kind of rolling for me. And when I moved to Nashville, and a lot of the ways that I did my upbringing was I didn't know my family had a band, but they were all in Florida. They never really made that big move. I was really the first one that made that extra step. How do you do this? I don't know. Loretta Lynn and her husband went in a car and radio station, and Waylon and them got in their cars and their Cadillacs and went and load the boys up and play some music and make some fans along, at every stop. And, you go to some place, there's 10 people. Hopefully when you come back, there's 12 and kind of keep growing. And so that's kind of how I based, getting to where we're at now. But it was, he passed away in the middle of my radio tour. And he had a heart attack. He had open heart surgery and had a heart attack unexpectedly. And I got down to Florida, and 2 days later we had a showcase, a massive showcase. And the importance of these. About to put out my first single. Warner has majority of country radio in Orlando. We have a sold out show 2 days before my grandfather passes. So I obviously get the calls of, hey, if you don't want to do this, we understand. Kind of like what we were talking about was, what that person wants you to do.
Sure.
And I remember standing on that stage when he was with us and looking up at that opera box and seeing his face smiling one time when we played there, and he was able to be there with us. And I remember going up to him and I was like, you see what you started? You see that? You know what I mean? This is what we're doing now. And, but it was just like, no, we got to do this. And I have one of his guitars. I have a few of his guitars, but the one that I hold dear to me that I never leave, I actually got to do my Grand Ole Opry debut with it. Is this old Gibson 335 that he had. And he wore the finish off of it. He wasn't a singer, he was a lead guitar player, and great Chet Atkins style, great picker. Cool. So we had a spotlight that shined on it the whole time. We got to put that up there, and the energy of that night, it was unbelievable. But he was a hardworking middle class man who was the guy that was there for everybody. So it was he was a rock to the family and the patriarch. And when it came time to name this album, to pick what would be the right thing to say, to really embody the whole thing, I thought when you listen to this album, I feel like fans will understand me better. I feel like there'll be a better connection. I feel like this record tells a story and it flows, and that a story began with Amos, my grandfather.
Was there a time, I can remember a night when fishing with my grandfather, we had a boat break down way back in the swamp. That we were fishing some flooded water, and it was dark, and he just started paddling. We had a little John boat with a 3.5 Johnson on it with no prop now. It was at the bottom of the blackest swamp. And that night, he's just started talking about stuff. I'm probably 7 or 8 years old. He told me about a son that he had that had died at childbirth, and he'd driven from North Louisiana all the way to Baton Rouge because he thought the doctors probably didn't know what they were doing. The kid was, I found out later, was already gone, but he was so focused on trying to save its life, drove down there apparently in a pouring rainstorm. And he told me this story, it was just one of those nights and next thing you know, we pull up on the bank where our truck was. I mean, you couldn't see your hand in front of your face, but he made his way all the way through that water and talking about stuff that mattered. And we had a bond after that we always did. I mean, because I had he didn't have my mother and my aunt he had 2 girls, and then they had 3 girls. I was the only boy. So me and him were thick as thieves anyway. But after that night, we became a special kind of friend too, on top of it. I felt like, I mean, for you to be this close to your grandfather, I know there were moments, but was there a time in your life when you sat down or he told you something that, like that you're like, he respects me, as a man? Or
yeah, I think there was a lot of moments. I relate to you a lot, and I was the first grandson of the bunch, and so I had 2 older sisters, and I came along, and him and I, man, it was like that. It was just always this kind of a best friend bond. It was like we just got each other. We're very similar in a lot of ways, and for me, it was always like he was who I held in my mind as who I did not ever want to disappoint. So I walked my days through. I made my decisions even through high school when you're an idiot, and doing your stupid things. A lot of the things that I decided not to, which I'm glad I didn't do, was because I thought, man, if my grandpa finds out,
your whole life will be like that. Mine's still that way.
I was about to say, I don't think that ends because it's still that way for me too, man. And so for me, grandfathers are always the king of the great one-liners that just make life make sense, And it's like, and for me, when I made the move to Nashville, I was playing. We were already selling hard tickets. A couple of radio stations in Florida were playing our songs, and I was seeing that growth. I was also teaching guitar lessons and then playing these shows on the weekend, and I was also doing telephone work because he was a telephone man for 50 years, install and repair and all that stuff. And I remember calling him. I called him and I called my dad and I said, man, what do I do? Do I move? Like, how do I do this? And he goes, man, well, I'll tell you what. He goes, you could stay. You could stay and you ride this out. And then when it fades out, it's done. He goes, you have a chance to do what we've all dreamt of doing. And my family never once was like, hey, do this because we want to. It was always like, as long as you want to do it, man, we're going to keep fueling the fire. And as long as the day, if you ever say you don't want to or whatever, like you're not going to hurt our feelings. But I remember being on the phone with him and it all just made sense when he said, you don't want to wake up 50 and going, man, I wonder if I would have moved, what would have happened? And he said, what's the worst case that could happen? You move. You get to experience some cool spots in Nashville. You get to go see some parts of the country I've never seen, your family's never seen. Get to play some country music, and it doesn't work. What's the worst? That's the worst that could happen. He goes, your odds are good, buddy. And it was just, that was a moment for me that I felt, you know what? He believes in what I'm doing. This isn't a grandfather telling a grandson, hey, buddy, you're doing good. This is, it's like a man-to-man conversation here of going, you could do this. And I would tell you this if you weren't related to me, and it was just one of those things of, I remember when I got a key to the city in my hometown, I got a day, and thousands of people showed up for this. And I got my grandfather up there and my dad. So I got the picture hanging up in my house. And I remember looking over and I got this photo and he's just smiling ear to ear. And that was another moment of afterwards. He came up, he goes, man, you've sure taken this thing off, and our big joke with him was because he got out, his all he loved to do was play music. And you know how hard it is to even get anything rolling, you know. And I mean, I lived 2.5 years with 5 guys in a 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment. You know, me and my cousins that are playing now would always joke with them. Would always be like, "You could have been like a doctor." You know what I mean? Like maybe something you could have passed down a little easier. But it was always the thing that we tell them, man, look what you started. Like you started this. You created this passion and didn't ever give up on it. And went to shows at the Moose Lodge like he was playing Madison Square Garden. You know, and he took it that serious. And I feel like I draw from that a lot, especially now, and especially with this album. Anytime I put his name on something, it's not just my name now. I've always feel like I'm, like you said, that doesn't go away. I guess you're always representing them. But once we said Amos is going to be the name of this album, it went from being very serious to extremely serious, and extremely serious of, I want this record to show the hard work and the determination and the love that he's passed down to us and to me, that I try to keep and to continue telling his story and telling his legacy of a man who was a middle-class man who, the day of his funeral, Kix, it was a 3-mile procession to the graveside. And that stood with me, and I still to this day, I'll have people come up to me and tell me stories, especially when I go home, of, man, your grandfather, if it wasn't for him, and he never told anybody this, he never had a lot of money, but he would do whatever and he'd give whatever, and he was always that guy, and he never did it for glory, never did it for nothing. A lot of this stuff we didn't find out till after he had passed on, of the lives that he touched and the little things that he did, and people are like, man, there was a time I didn't know if I'd pay my light bill, but Amos showed up, man, and that was it. And, you know, I remember working with him as a kid, and there was this little, you know, when you're 13, 14 years old and you're like, I got my buddies, man, I don't want to be putting this telephone work in here. We're at this trailer park, and this little old lady was there, and we put her telephone lines in, and this story embodies my grandfather. If anybody wants to know who Amos was, this was him. And he sees this satellite dish in a box. He's like, "Yeah, you getting some satellite, huh?" She's like, "Yeah." He says, what you been watching? She goes, I'm waiting for my son to get down from wherever he was living, and to put it up. Keep in mind, Kix, this is 8:00 at night, right? So it's dark. And he goes, "So yeah, you ain't got TV?" She said, No, I'll get it whenever he gets here. He said, No, hell no, you just give me a second. It took us 4 hours to get this satellite dish put up and everything, and not charged one dime, not nothing. And Christmas time, I actually rode past that trailer park, looked over, and that satellite dish is still sending up there. But that's who he was, man. He saw stuff like that, and he was the first guy to lend a hand, and first guy to do it for nothing. You know, he didn't. It wasn't for any of that. It was just for,
and that word neighbor meant something, and had a far-reaching arm too.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
Tell me, this is cool. Tell me about the donations for the animal shelters, and you're kind of basing this on your dog.
Yeah.
What's his name?
I adopted her name's Wrigley.
Her name?
Yeah, it's a Husky Shepherd.
Wrigley. Yeah.
I adopted her. We were playing Lake Shake in Chicago, and we were.
Were we on that show together?
Not that night. No, we were on. I think Miranda Lambert and Little Big Time were on it that night. But you know, they had these puppies there, and I originally she's a beautiful all white Husky Shepherd, and took the photo to send to my little sister. And next thing you know, she's with me, and I'm using her for this. They want me to use her for this little thing that we're doing for paws. And anyway, it grows from there. And I'm like, I don't know if I just fell for this. I don't know if y'all saw me coming, but I can't leave her. I'll do the paperwork and whatever. And so she left with me, and the next day, Tracy Lawrence and Runaway June was teaching her how to sit in a field in Iowa. And so me and my band joked, I go, it took me 10 years to get this stuff, and then this dog just got it. But fans started bringing, once the word got out, they started bringing, bags of toys. And 3 or 4 nights shows, and you get 2 or 3 bags in a row. I'm going to leave it on a weekend with 30 toys and all these bags of food, and I'm just giving them out. And I'm like, man, what can we do? We're just about to start the planning for the headline tour, and I wanted to be able to give back to the local cities and the communities that give us so much when we roll through and treat you like you're from there and your family, and then we leave. And I thought, man, there's got to be something we can do. And I thought, well, if they're going to give this much to my dog, what are they going to do for their own? How big could we really grow this? And so I started Wrigley Cares and partnered with Zappos for Good, and they helped me. Got in connection with local non-kill shelters in every tour stop, and we'd ask fans to bring dog food, cat food, whatever, the smallest, the biggest, whatever you can bring, whatever's on your heart, bring it. We'll got a place for it. And whoever the shelter was, they'd come to the show, and then they'd leave with all the food. And then 4 weeks, Kix, was over 100,000 meals.
Oh wow!
And it just started growing, and it was just, it's now became this big thing. And I wanted to, you know, we've partnered up with Puma. We got a shoe coming out with Puma where 100% of the profits are going to go to Wrigley Cares. And I mean, you ask the fans, country music fans, they're the most passionate fans on the planet, and it's the reason why we have what we have. It's the reason why country music artists have such a longevity that they have, is because the fans, when you ask, hey, can y'all do this? They're going to do it. You better be ready. Because I was not, you know what I mean? I'm like, hey, yeah, y'all bring some dog food. We're going to help raise some awareness and help the local animal shelters. And next thing you know,
ain't it the truth?
It's this big thing because, man, you asked, you better be ready because they're coming and they're going to be tenfold and they're going to be
awesome.
As passionate. And they're not going to let you forget either, you know? And so they're going to keep you accountable for it. And it's just been a really cool thing that honestly, it started with them. I mean, they gave us the idea and then it's now just became this big thing that I'm proud of.
So you never had a dog before?
I did growing up. Yeah. Growing up I did. And it was always rescues, or, you know, I grew up on 10 acres in a double wide trailer. And so it was always either rescues or strays running around. And my dad grabbed one off and try to find out what, you know, who it was. But obviously that was before Facebook and all that stuff. So no one had any.
Probably not a husky in Florida.
I did not have it. That's where it started
Huskies
from.
Are great. I had a husky and they are the smartest. I had a handful of basset hounds, but huskies are unbelievable.
She's great, man.
Yeah,
she's awesome.
They get it real fast, but they're not. I had a husky in Louisiana too. I'm sure when this weather comes around, and she's not in Michigan anymore. She's going, Dad, we get a haircut or something.
She literally just started shedding the first day of a 4-day run in the bus. It looked like it was snowing. It looked like we were in the North Pole. This stuff was everywhere, man. She'd sit down like my band's wearing black. My band's just outside. Everybody's lint rolling each other off, and like getting this freaking white hair off of everything. And I bought stock in Swiffer, I think, on that run from trying to get her hair off. But it's awesome.
Might be time for a poodle cut, man.
Let's get her one of them lion cuts.
Oh, thanks for coming in. It's good catching up a little bit.
You too. Thank you.
The music's awesome. All you got to do is listen to that. We can talk about it all day, but it's better to put an ear on
Absolutely.
it. And I enjoyed hearing about your grandpa. That's stuff that matters.
Thank you, buddy. Appreciate it, man.
All
Thank
right.
you, Kix.